Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Aspie Bridge. I'm Suzanne Plumley, your torchbearer, and I'm learning as much as you are all about how to get a working job that I am going to thrive and love. And that is my dear friend and guest Wendy's book that I just held up. It's also behind her if you want to see the full cover. But we're talking on this last week. We've done 5 sessions. Actually, we did 4 with internet challenges in the middle, but we did 5 topics on how to really make the workplace work for us. And that's important because if you're not feeling comfortable and welcome in your workplace, it's going to be a lot harder for you to stay long term. And I know a number of you are like, I stayed in something for 6 months. I was only there for a year. So the idea of even 5 years seems a long time. And I get that. I get that. So we're going to be talking about listening to our bodies emotionally, physically, and intellectually to know, how is this job working for us? How are we handling the tasks that are asked of us? Are we finding the ally that will help us go forward? And are we really able to do the tasks that we originally signed up to do? And these are all little indicators that our body will tell us, I think it's time to move on. But before I go into this topic further, because as you know, with all the awesome autistic individuals out there who are telling you what the traits of autism are, such as Paul Micallef, which is autism on the inside, and Ryan Kelly, they're both out in Australia. We have Samantha Stein in the Netherlands, Sarah Hendricks in the UK, Temple Grandin here in the US, as well as so many other wonderful late diagnosed or diagnosed. I mean, they might have been diagnosed earlier in their lives as well. A lot of us have been late diagnosed, which is where I put a lot of this emphasis for this bridge on, because we never received the resources. The mission of the Aspie Bridge is to give everyone the resources that we were never given, because we found out long after we got out of school, long after anyone thought that we had a problem. And we didn't have a problem. We had challenges throughout our lives that were not seen as autistic. Because if you look at it, autism was not clearly known in the medical field. It's still not clearly understood in the medical field. It is in the psychology field, but not in the medical field, nor was it known when we were going to school up until about 2000 in the education field, and 2008 for the girls. And that's a long time to go if were born back in the 60s and 70s, which is about where I came into this world. Autism wasn't known. So all of our challenges were not seen. That's what makes us late diagnosed, is because we went all through school having challenges. They were autistic challenges, but the word autism wasn't known back then. So no one knew how to help us. No one knew what resources we needed unless we advocated. And I don't know too many third graders who can say, this is what I need. So anyway, let's get to our subject at hand. We're now adults. We're now working with the workplace. And we now are saying, how can I thrive? I don't want to just survive. And we also know financially what we need, whether we're taking care of rent or we're taking care of a car payment or gasoline or groceries. We know those numbers. And yet, sometimes our bodies will tell us differently. Our bodies will say, yes, I know you're getting X amount of dollars per hour, but is this working for you? I found that out. Wendy, what would you like to add? By the way, folks, this is Wendy. You know her really well. She's joined us a number of times, and we're doing this 5-part series all about the workplace because it is such a crucial point in our lives. It's our social and our financial all tied together. Go ahead,
Yes.
Wendy.
It's so important. And, we had been talking about how do you know when it's time to quit? Sometimes you're staying somewhere and it might be hard on you physically. And now you and I both love the acronyms. I'm gonna have to switch and put on my reading glasses now because I realize I can't read without the reading glasses. Okay. But the acronym that I use in the book for quitting, knowing when to quit, is issues, because there's usually issues that come up. And the first I in issues stands for interpersonal issues. If you're working with someone like you've shared about the manager who would like tap you on the shoulder, that's an interpersonal issue that was like inappropriate. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes there's just people that you don't get along with. The first S in issues stands for sensory issues. It might be perfume in a department store. It
Or the
might be,
fan that
oh, the
was up
fan,
above
the
me.
sound of that
Yes.
fan right over your head. Those sensory issues can make it really difficult to stay in that job. The second S in issues is social issues. If they require a lot of socialization in ways that are just exhausting. So if you're like having to face front with customers all day long, then you might not have anything left to even cook your dinner when you get home because those social issues are exhausting. The U in issues stands for uncertainty issues. If you go to work and you're uncertain, what's your schedule going to be this week? Are they going to change it suddenly and call you and say, oh, well, now you have to show up first thing in the morning, even though you thought you were going to have the day off? Or, well, now you have to do this other job, even though you thought you were going to do this task today. We've thrown something else in. Being uncertain in your work is another reason that people might choose to quit. The E in issues stands for expectations. What are their expectations and what are yours? Are they expecting more than you can actually do? Do they have really high expectations? Because for them, they might not want to spend the money to hire two people. They might want you to do it all. And those expectations are not realistic. And if that's what you're dealing with, you might need to quit. And the last S in issues is sanity issues. Are they driving you crazy? Are you are you just at your limit? And I know Suzanne, you can talk about the whole thing of listening to your body and listening to your mind. If they're driving you crazy, if your sanity is at stake, that might be a good time to just say goodbye and walk out the door. So there's a lot of issues to think about that might mean that's not the right job for you.
Exactly, Wendy. That acronym is perfect to gauge for people. Just go home and write on a piece of paper issues. And just think about that. When your body starts to give you that uh-oh feeling, and you can feel it usually in your stomach. You just go to work and you're just like, I know it's not something I ate.
Yeah.
And that's usually stress that you build up in your stomach. It's the stress of going in and having to perform. And so much of what Wendy was describing, I could tell you in a story. I could tell you in two stories because I've now left two jobs since Wendy has been a part of my podcast. And that was because I did listen to my body. I did listen to the urges. And one time I waited too long, and that was with my Starbucks. And that was the sensory. A lot of leaving a Starbucks was sensory issue. I kept pushing through. And you need to ask yourself, are you pushing through? Are you trying to make it to that milestone? Which, while it's very important and it does show consistency, don't do it at the cost of your health. Because what I found, if you go into a Starbucks or any coffee shop that has a lot of timers and bells and whistles, and even working at the drive-through, there was a fan that was over my head that made it very difficult for me to communicate to my customers. Not to mention the fact that it didn't even work for what it was meant to be used for. And so many of us autistic, if something's going to be turned on, we wanted to serve a real reason. And if it doesn't work, we begin to be like, anyway, that's not the point of it. But sensory was a big part of it. And the other thing was expectations. So often I went in with the clear idea that I was supposed to communicate with the customers so that they didn't realize the amount of time that was passing while their drink was being made or their food was being made. I was there to welcome them to the day and talk to them. So all of a sudden, if competition, which I've talked to you about a number of other times, speed, which I communicate well, that's my strength. Speed is not my strength. So when speed got in the way of my ability to communicate with the customers, now you're talking about expectations that are automatically changed. Or there were times when I would have to run up to the front register and get off of window, which I enjoyed. And if there's not a previous explanation of, you're doing great, but we really need you on the front, that would have been all it would have taken to say to me, I wasn't doing anything wrong. They just wanted me on the front registers, which brought in the more sensory issues. So sadly, from Starbucks, I went home and I had a burnout because I didn't listen to my body. I didn't listen to what it needed. And then I wasn't able to work at all for a period of time. Now, I went to another job where I was a personal shopper. And we were talking about that. Speed got in the way of me performing at my best. And that didn't take as long for me to listen to my body and say, is this worth it? Is this going to be pushing your body too far? You're already on burnout, and now you're pushing your body physically even more. This is why it's important to listen to our bodies and not just say, but I'm in line for a promotion or I'm in line for a higher pay. Well, sometimes your body, it doesn't matter how much you're going to get paid if your body can't work with you. What would you say, Wendy, as far as physically having to stop a job, even if the money is good? Because that's where I found myself. I was at a point where I was going to go to a different job, but the money was half the amount, but it was a better job for my health. Where would you put the balance?
That is a very tough question because, we need money to live. That's just the reality of the situation. But you also need your body to be healthy, you know. So people make these kinds of weighing in the balance, which is the best thing. And I have made choices in my life where I chose to work for a private school that paid very little money, but that really I could believe in what they were doing. I was learning a lot and I was gaining experience, but I wasn't making much money. And that was good for me in that season. And then later I would go to the public schools where you're never going to get rich, but you're never going to starve either. So we make those decisions: more money, less money, more other satisfactions, more listening to yourself, and that's so important. And it's hard for sometimes it's hard for the boss to understand what's going on with someone who's autistic. Because, like in your Starbucks case, you have a strength, and not every autistic person has the strength, everybody's different, but you have a strength in talking to customers. That's a valuable thing at the window because they don't want people to get impatient and start saying, where's my drink? Where's my drink? But many autistic people I know have difficulty shifting gears. And so once the drink is ready, they want you to like immediately cut off that conversation and give them the drink and go on. It's like a sudden shift from here's my strength, I can chat with people, to, well, now I have to stop because the drink is here. And of course, the boss is just thinking, just get the drink to them, get the next car up here. We're just, moving right through it. That's how they make their money. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it's a balance of, does this work for me or not? The strengths were important strengths for that role, but then the expectation of, now suddenly cut off your strength, in the middle. And I appreciate that you that is your strength in chatting with people, because I've driven through a lot of coffee places. I like coffee. And one thing I hear almost from everybody is, so what are you doing today? What's going on today? Got any plans? And it's like it's not always just one, we've got a lot of different coffee places and I go to all of them. And it's like they were all trained not just to make conversation with me. Some of them do. Some of them like remember me and we'll have a chat about my books. But for many of them, it's just, what are you doing now? What's next for you? Where are you going? Why are you here? And I will usually just tell them, when they say, what are your plans? It's like, I'm getting coffee. What could be better? How does anything else matter? Because I don't want to say, that's none of your business. I don't have time to explain to you that I have to take one of my kids to the dentist, or, you don't care either. But that it's the same every time. I just had to come up with my own response. I'm getting coffee. Isn't it lovely? Isn't it wonderful? And by then the drink comes and I can leave. But you're good at actually relating to your customers. I mean, there's a certain amount of scripting, but you also bring your personality to it and your heart to it. And it's unfortunate that shifting back and forth to go with your strength to then now you have to suddenly quit and stop in mid-conversation because the drink is here and we're boom, boom, boom. That's hard when you have a strength. And sometimes it does mean going to a place that pays less because you had to listen to your body and your own health. Your health is so important. You're no good for anybody if you can't work at all, So finding a place that doesn't wear you down and sap your energy. I mean, all jobs are going to take some energy, but you need to find one that is supportive. I've had jobs where I was excited to show up in the morning. I was just a thrill to be there. And I used to think, if I won the lottery, I would still come out and I'd fulfill my years. I signed a contract. I would still come to this job. When you find that job, great, because that feeds you rather than depletes you. And sometimes there's jobs where it's like, okay, I'm here again. I've got to do this. I said I would. But as much as you can, choose to leave when you have to leave, but hopefully when you already have something else lined up, because we all have to eat. We need a roof over our heads. But there is no shame in taking a job that pays you less money, but that feeds your soul better, even if it's not like, this is my life's work. It's like, this is not killing me. This is a job where I can come and leave and not bring home any burdens with me, because when I walk out the door, the job is over.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so true. And you and I were talking about temporary work.
Oh,
Getting
yeah.
into temporary work. And
Mhm.
here in Texas, there isn't as much temporary work, but there are still places like Dollar Trees and Dollar Generals and some of the
Yeah.
smaller stores like that, which allow you to get a little bit of the income while you're figuring it all out. And that's what we call an interim job. It may not be something that's in your wheelhouse of interest, but it does keep the paycheck coming in each week. And it buys you time so you're not stuck in a job that's not good for you health wise or emotional wise, but it still serves a portion of your time that it allows you to stay social so you're not isolating yourself. It keeps money coming in so that if family is concerned, oh, you're not working again. You can say,
Yeah.
no, I am working. I am working. And I'll
Yes.
do the best I can to find the next thing. But some job is better than no job
Yes.
unless you need to really take care of your body during the burnout, which is what I had said before. When I left this most current job, I already had another job lined up. And so I
Good.
went to the managers and I said, I'd like to give you a soft leave of absence or soft exit, And what I mean by that is you just let someone know that you can trust, hey, I need to move on. I don't want to give you a hard date because I don't know when it's going to come. In other words, if you haven't gotten the job offer yet, you don't want to give a hard
Yeah.
leave because that will leave you with a week or two with no income. But you can say, I want to give you a soft leave, and then once you get the job, you can give a written leave. It's always important that you don't burn your bridge.
Yeah.
Don't
Um,
burn your bridge. Go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah, well, there are some places where just I'm like playing the opposite side of it, where if you
Totally.
give a soft leave, they think, oh, they're leaving anyway. Well, let's just hire somebody right now, and you can go now, and then you don't have that 2 weeks, and you're out before you get the new job. So you have to really judge: is it safe to give a soft leave because that's not required of you? Um, or can you just internally think, this is my soft leave? I know that I'm leaving, and I'm finding my other job, but you have to protect yourself, take
Oh
care of
yeah.
yourself.
Oh, definitely.
And-
And go ahead. Go ahead.
oh,
It's
well,
you.
if there are people listening who are in places where there are temp agencies, the flip sides of temp agencies are some people really love everything to be the same every day. And it would be hard for them to work somewhere for 2 weeks and then work somewhere else. Other people find that they can start a new thing and be there. And if they don't like it, just knowing it's only for 2 weeks, they can do it. And then they can leave. They don't have to try to make like lifelong friends because they're not going to be there. So they don't have to socialize. But if you're one of those people who can do something for 2 weeks and then leave, and if there's a temp agency in your area, that can be a good way. And it's a way for you to check out the different job type, the places and say, do I enjoy this kind of work? Do I enjoy this company? Do I want to apply for a permanent here if they've got one? And
Mm.
they will know your work ethic. They will know that you're a good worker so that if they do have an opening and they already know you can do the job, you've got a an advantage over the strangers that might be applying for it.
Oh, very true. Very, very true. I do like that standpoint. Yeah, I just want to clarify for my sake. If you don't know where you're going to, do not put in a soft leave.
Okay.
If you don't know, like for me, I knew that I was going to be going to another store. And I was just waiting to make sure I had that the interview went well. The interview was already lined up. So maybe that's when you put the soft leave is when you have an interview date on the calendar and you're pretty sure because it's something that you'll be getting. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
formality.
And if you
Don't,
trust,
yeah, go
I'm sorry,
ahead.
you trusted the person that you gave the soft uh, leave to, you trusted that person. Because if you just have an interview on the calendar and you don't have that trusting relationship, you had an ally. But if it's not an ally, just an employer, then you might want to wait until you have the actual job offer in hand, because not all employers are equally, uh, are allies. You've had
Well,
some
that's
allies in your career, and that I know you've talked about allies. It's so important. But if you don't have an ally, don't don't tell them until you've got the actual contract in hand, your next job offer.
very good point. Very good point. Yes, that is true. Because the whole idea is that you don't want to the proverbial statement is shoot yourself in the foot
Sure.
with the idea that you think you know where you're going next and then you're out of a job. And yes, I knew the manager that I spoke to and I wanted to if I ever needed to go back to that job in a different capacity, I wanted them to know, well, she did give her 2 week notice. And that way I could go back. And my point even more so is quitting the day that your body says no more. That
Mhm.
might happen in emergency cases,
Yeah.
but you really want to give them the part of the work ethic is many places know, well, did you give your 2-week notice?
Yeah.
And by my giving a soft notice, knowing with someone I trusted, I knew that that could serve as one of the 2 weeks. So I was not having to stay the whole 2 weeks. And I worked 1 week at both jobs.
Ah, okay. And for some people, they get the job offer, but they might not have to start for 2 weeks. So they can get the
Exactly.
offer in hand, then put in their 2 weeks because we all want to do things by the book. And sometimes they don't even want the 2 weeks. Sometimes you give your 2 weeks notice and they'll say, never mind, you're done.
Yeah.
I knew someone who worked as a secretary in an office, and two of the secretaries were going to get fired, like by the end of the month, or I guess it was right before Christmas, and they were going to get fired in January, but nobody wanted to tell them. And then the gossip leaked out, and they found out that they were going to get fired. So then the powers that be thought, oh, well, now that they know, let's just do it right now. So they went ahead and fired him before Christmas, which was not cool. But the bosses were kind of cowardly. They did not want to have that conversation, because it wasn't like a big professional thing. It was like a small, family operated thing. And so they didn't want to say you're fired. But once the other person knew that they were fired, it's like, okay, then it's now. And they just cut them off right then. So anything you can do to give yourself more time to get another paycheck, um, before, and working for two places at once on that overlap, that worked. You gave your 2 weeks, but you also had the new job coming in. That worked for
Yes.
you.
Exactly. Exactly. And sometimes it's just a matter of knowing you. And I think that if you wait too long to make a shift, to find another job, and this is the important part right here, is if you wait till your body is screaming before you start looking for another job, you may not have that option of going to another job because your body is saying, I need rest. I need rest. So if you start looking as soon as you're getting that nudge, like, okay, this is not feeling quite right for me, let me look now to see what I can at least get temporarily. Now your body has a chance to wind down with one job and build back up with another job. And as I say, I had no weeks of unwork, of no
Mhm.
work. I had
That was
one
good.
week of double jobs. And
Yeah.
that's probably a preference because that gives you an extra week, especially if you're reducing your pay. That gave me 1 week of an extra paycheck.
Yeah. That was smart.
So that is one way to go about doing it. And I know a lot of you have Dollar Trees around you or Dollar Generals, or can you think of another store that might be like that where people can just jump in
Dollar
quickly?
store. We have
Yeah.
Goodwill. I've known people that got jobs at Goodwill or that kind of thing.
And if you're not the social person, then you'll say, okay, I'm going to just do this for a number of weeks while I look for the right job. There's nothing that says that the person with the least amount of jobs wins. There's nothing that says with the most number of jobs wins. It's up to you when you shift. But you're going to be hurting yourself if you stay too long and your body is reacting, or if you stay too short. I do like to say to people, encourage them. And this is not a requirement, but I do like to encourage them. 6 months at a job will tell you whether or not you can improve your skills, and the job will get easier. If you say, oh, 2 weeks, I can't do this, then you do. If you go for your next job, how long were you at your last job, ma'am? I was there for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not going to work well. But if you say, you know what, I gave it my best shot. I was there for 6 months. I showed up on time. I never called out. I just learned that my body couldn't handle that type of work. That's why I'm trying this line of work, which I know I can serve you better.
Yeah. And you're not even required to tell them that your body couldn't handle that kind of work because that might make them think, well, maybe her body can't handle this kind of work either. We want her to work. Um, so don't overshare in the interview. Don't tell them more than you have to,
That's the
really.
important part for that interview part, because yes, we
Yeah.
do tend to be very honest.
Yes, many people do. Oh, and I just had a thought. You said, are there other things like Dollar Tree? Um, and I remembered that some people that I know are getting jobs doing in-home care because they're really good one-on-one and they
Right.
love to be helpful. So if there's an elderly person and they can go to their house, wash their dishes, cook their meal, vacuum or whatever that person can't do for themselves and then leave. It's not somebody that needs like their bedpan changed probably, but there's different levels of care. You can be at a level of care where someone just needs you to come and take their dog for a walk and cook them a meal. Um, that kind of one-on-one helpful and knowing that you're really contributing to that person's life rather than contributing to Starbucks life.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a kind of job that I think there's usually a need for. And if that's your strength and your heart, hopefully you can find one that will pay you well, because those jobs deserve to be well paid. I don't know much about them, except that they're so much appreciated by the people who receive the services.
Yes, one of our dear listeners, Marilyn, would do that. And she found that very, very promising, very much something she enjoyed doing. And she was on a couple of weeks ago. So that was something that she found that she could do and she enjoyed it. And
Yes.
now let's go and talk about one other subject that you and I talked about, Wendy, and that was, let's find out that you did do an interim job and you were doing it well. You were doing it to the best of your ability. The environment was right. The job tasks that they were asking you to do it right. And now here comes another level up that you can go into. You're enjoying the job. It may not be paying enough, but maybe there's another position higher up that you really don't want to go for the next interview, but you would like to stay with the job you have, but just raise your income. There's always a possibility that you can say to them, well, I did this just yesterday. By the way, I was a shipper receiver for Barnes and Noble college bookstores. I can go into that position. And the manager put on a big smile, knowing that her back room was full. Another thing is I'm an organizer. I love to organize. That was another thing. So while you're in a job, you can start to look around and say, you know what? I can offer. Don't go and tell them what to do or how to improve. Wendy, you and I talked about this earlier. Don't go and tell them what to do or how they can do it better. You can offer, by the way, I have experience doing blank. And I wanted to let you know that if you need someone to fulfill this position, I'd be happy to help you out.
You're offering to fill a need. If there's a need for someone doing that and you've got experience, then it's just saying, I have this experience. If I can ever be helpful to you, please call on me. I want to be helpful. That's what they would love to hear, isn't it?
It is. It was definitely something that they could use. And so feel free to say to people, I want to offer that I can do this. Sometimes you have to be very careful with initiative, though,
Yeah.
because I was in a store where I took the initiative that I thought would be very helpful, and it wasn't helpful. And you need to ask someone that you trust, an ally in that level of management, how do you feel about people taking initiative on a project? Because some will love it, but some will be, no, I'm sorry, I need you to do this. Then if you are wandering off and doing that skill, you know that you're taking a risk. But if they love it, why not show it? So you want to ask them how they feel about taking initiative on a project.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the trap that is sometimes neurotypical people or people in the neuromajority might not realize that it's a trap. But if a boss is asked, "How do you feel about people taking initiative?" They will almost always they will say yes, because that seems like a good idea. Like, I want you to do more work without me telling you to do more work. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they want you to say, here's my suggestion of how things can go better if they haven't asked. If you're like in a staff meeting and they say there's a real problem with the XYZ, then you could say, what if we tried this that might help that thing that you just said was a problem? Then they might be open to it. But if they don't really, if they think the status quo is fine and I don't want to throw any extra money at anything, and then you start offering to change things, they might pull back and be resentful of that. They won't tell you that they're resentful. But later on, if they see an opportunity to hire someone else and kick you out, they might. Who knows? You know,
Very
one
true.
thing that a lot of women and a lot of autistic folk, many of us are kind of programmed for honesty, and to say whatever is on our hearts. But in some work cases, we have to kind of censor what we say out loud. Um, and uh, and that can be hard because you're thinking, I know how to make this better. And here's what you can do to make it better. And what they're hearing is, you think we're not doing things okay? Who are you to tell me that we're not doing? We're a big company and you're an employee, or you were, and now you're not. Goodbye.
Mm.
You know, it's very easy for them to take things the wrong way, unfortunately. So do wait until maybe it comes up as, here's a problem that needs to be solved. And then you tell them how, here's an idea.
Absolutely. Initiatives can either help you or hurt you with the
Yeah.
next job. So be very careful. Know who you're talking to. Don't
Yes.
walk in the first week and say, I know how we can make this better. I know what we can do to make this store look more beautiful. I know what that I
Yeah.
know may seem like you're taking care of the
Yeah.
job, but it may work against you. And that leads
Sadly.
me into the idea of when the employer is not willing to accept your ideas and they feel threatened and they show you the door.
Yeah. Sometimes, everybody gets fired at some point in our lives, I think. If you work long enough, people are going to get fired. It's just a part of life. It doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. It just means that happened and you need to move on. And I've got an acronym for that too. It's a
Go
silly
for
one
it.
because there's kind of three steps to it. The first step is, boom, out of the blue, they tell you you're fired when you thought you were doing a good job, and you think, pardon my initials, that is some BS. So BS is the first stage of shock. And then the next one, you feel like you've been hit by a truck and you need to go to the ER. So ER is for the second stage. And the last stage is try, TRY. So starting with BS, the B stands for burnout. And and have talked about, burnout is very real. And maybe you got fired because you were already burned out. And maybe you really experienced the burnout after you got fired. It's like, oh, now I can't, I'm just completely can't deal with this. And the S in BS stands for self-care. And I know this is so important. You have talked about that, and I know you're going to talk about it some more. So you deserve that self-care, and you need to take a breath, take a breather. If you can possibly afford to not jump right into the new job search, take at least a weekend or as long as you can afford. And then comes the ER. You have to go to the ER. The E stands for evaluate. After you've had some time to self-care and get your head together, evaluate what went wrong and how it might have looked from the other side. Because I guarantee you, you weren't trying to get fired. You
No.
were doing what you thought was the right thing. And that's why it was such a shock to get fired. So evaluate, how did they take it? What was their perspective? And the R and ER is regroup. Okay, you've had some time to rest, you burned out, you rested, you evaluated, now you're going to regroup to be prepared to get out again and try. And the try starts with temp work. The T in try is temp work because that is something you could do. The R in try stands for restricted hours. Maybe you can survive more if you're working fewer hours, then you're not going to burn out as easily. And the Y is to say yes to you. You deserve to create the work life that supports you, not that beats you down and burns you out. So when you say no to something like working overtime, you're saying yes to yourself and you deserve that yes. And I know you've got experience in these things.
I sometimes think that I'm the walking, talking, let's try it out so I can give information to everybody else. For the last 2 years, I have been what I call, okay, let me try this out and see what this is all about.
Yeah,
And
that's life.
if I can go into the spiritual realm, I think that's why God has given me some of these challenges so that I can know internally how to help you through this, how to help you see that it's not you, unless you were purposely, as we talked about last week, not living up to work ethics. I mean, there is a halfway point where if you're doing what is expected of you, if you're doing what is on the job description, you're working your best, you're taking your hyper focus to a positive level of really getting into your work and completing it, and you get fired anyway, then that's one way. But if you're not living up to work ethics, if you're sitting around procrastinating on your phone or you're walking around, well, they may decide that they just can't have you not being productive anymore.
And if
And
I could
that's a
just,
hard thing. Go
it
ahead.
is. I just want to say, and sometimes it doesn't mean that you're lazy. It doesn't mean that you're a bad worker. It usually means you're burned out, whether you recognize it yet or not. If
Excellent.
you are not doing your best and are on your phone during the work hours, as an autistic employee, you are probably burned out. And that's the way you're trying to escape or regroup on the job, is to just withdraw from all that. So don't beat yourself. I mean, it might cause you to be fired. And then you have to regroup and go on and try again. But none of that means that you're a bad person or a bad worker or that you don't deserve to have the life that, the life that supports you and supports your health, including your mental health, as well as your roof over your head and food on the table.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that brings up another statement. If you are someone who does have a strong support system around you, you have a parent or a sibling or someone in your family that you feel comfortable putting your cards on the table, and that's a big ask.
Yeah.
I understand that because I don't have that right now. But if you have someone in your family that you can sit down with and say, listen, here are the situations in my job. This is why it's physically wearing on my body. Would you be willing to help me either A, go to someone and help me find a loan while I regroup? Or would you be willing to help me get a loan? You don't want them to fix your problems. And this is what a lot of times what will happen is family comes in, uh-oh, they go on what they call emergency alert. Uh-oh, she's going to quit her job. Now we're responsible. But if you could go to them ahead of time and let them know what's going on. Listen, I'm being asked to work faster than my body can handle it. I'm being timed, and if I can't meet time, my hours are going to go down. I have a choice. I can either keep going in this job and getting paid X amount of dollars, but I may not do it well and I'll lose hours, or I need to change. If you have a supportive network around you, a family who you can sit down and say, Would you be willing to help me for a short time? You want to emphasize with your family that you're not expecting them to take care of you for the rest of your life. But if you can say to them, would you be willing to help me get through this tough time? I don't want you to fix anything, but I want you to be my support system. Would you help me sit down and find out what opportunities are out there for me? Would you be willing to sit down at a bank and help me get a lower interest loan to pay off some bills or buy groceries while I'm in this interim? It's very important if you do have a support network to let them know what's going on in your life. Because if
Yeah,
all of a sudden you're not working, they may get nervous.
sure. Yeah, and and of course, if you're living with a spouse or a life partner who has a job, then that might give you a cushion. You of course are going to talk to them so that you are not going to be out on the streets. You have a living situation while you regroup and get back out there. And in these times that we're living in, lots and lots of people since the pandemic, certainly, and uncertainty, a lot of people are moving back in with their parents. They can't afford their rent, or with a sibling. Uh, and there's nothing wrong with you if that's what you are doing. That is not a negative reflection on you. That's just that these are difficult times. But what you said about having a timeline and saying this is not going to be forever. If you don't already live there and you're saying, can I come live with you? Put a timeline on it so that they will understand. And then when that timeline approaches, you bring it up. If you say, I really need to be here for 6 months while I get my act together, maybe get training for a new job, um, then at the end of 6 months, if you haven't brought it up, they might feel like, oh, this is just going to it's going to go to forever. They forgot that they said 6 months. So around 5 months, if you said, I just want to acknowledge, I said 6 months, now we're at the 5 month part, and you can make a note on your calendar so you remember. And I just want you to know this is still my goal. I want to be out in the next month. Here's what you can do to support me. So that they don't have to bring it up, because especially parents might find it difficult. They don't want to throw their child out on the street, but they also don't want to be used for the rest of their life. They're older and might be on a, limited income. So honor what you said you were going to do and let them know. You bring it up first. They should never have to bring up how long are you going to stay. You bring it up so that they can feel comfortable. Most parents want to help their kids, but they also don't want to feel like I'm going to get sucked dry and then I'm going to be 85 years old out on the streets myself because my child has stolen all my money. Um, Not that they think you're going to steal their money, but if you continue to be the one to say, this is how long I'm going to stay. I recognize that we're getting close to that timeline, and it's my intention to stick with the timeline. Now, if you can't, then you need to renegotiate. You need to say, I know it's been 6 months. At this time, I've tried this, this, and this, and I don't have a job yet. I'm hoping that we can add 3 months to this so that I can do this, this, and this. When they see that you're doing things, you're not laying on the couch all day playing video games or sleeping all day. You're out there trying to get a job because that's what you want. When they see that, then they know they can be comfortable letting you move in with them, and you can be the one to help them feel better about that so that they know, it's like you did a good job parenting me. That's why, and although, a lot of people are in the same position, it is not unusual for adult children to move back in with their parents, but you can be the one that is not that stereotype, mooching off your parents. You are just, living with them while you are doing the things that you know you need to do, and you keep doing those things.
Yes, yes. Now, here's the flip side of the story is when the family is not as supportive.
Yeah,
And sadly, we need to take into that account because I've seen it firsthand where
yeah,
that can be a problem. What do you do if your family is not supportive, if they haven't accepted your autism? Well, there are a number of ways that you can, in perhaps, depending on what the financial picture is of your family. No, you don't want them fixing your problems. No, you don't want to take money from them, because that is a control string, a puppet string, as I would call it. You don't want to have to take money. And that is a big one right there, because they will trade that for control. But if you were to say to them, here are some ideas. If there is an inheritance plan, I might be interested in working off of my inheritance, which is what I'm at right now. I'm working. It will mean that when the time comes, you will get less money. But that's a trade-off for right now, for your safety for right now. And
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. Or you can say to them, your credit is better. Would you be willing to help me co-sign for a loan so that I can get some money ahead of time to pay my bills, so that you're not held responsible for it? That's
Mm.
another way. That's the way I almost wish that my family had gone about it. My family are fixers. They're not problem solvers. You really want to try and get them into the problem solving. Will you sit down with me and help me apply for SSDI? In my case, a lot of people will wait till they can't work at all anymore. And if I don't know what your state has for a waiting list, the state of Texas had 80,000 people on the list. And I've been waiting for a year. I can only imagine what would happen if I waited till right now to start the process. No, we don't want SSDI. In many cases, those of us who are late diagnosed have the capabilities to work. But if you find that you're going into a job that does not pay your bills, SSDI might be the extra cushion that your family can't afford to give you.
Yes.
So when is the right time to apply? I would say perhaps when you're in your 50s. I wouldn't do it as a 25-year-old, because you're going to have a hard time getting them to approve that. But if you're in your 50s, they say that when you can no longer get training, such as going back to college or going to a technical school, when you can no longer get training because you're of the age where you're close to retirement, that might be the time to start, even though you feel healthy.
Yeah.
Because I saw, excuse me, over time, how that time period, I've changed in a year.
Yeah. We change. And another way of looking at that is, once you know you are disabled, you could apply for disability services, and that might not be a paycheck. That might be job training and job finding, career support. But if you get identified even at 25 as a disabled person, then when you're 50 and you say, okay, now I can't get trained for something new. I want to retire, but I'm 50, I'm still young. Then having disability payments might be able to more easily kick in, because you've already been identified as a disabled person. And I think everyone who's disabled has the right to say, I've got a right to live and I have a disability, and let's respect that. Um, uh, and there are different services in different places. I know somebody in my state who, when she went in for her checkup, she gets her medical care is free because she's poor. She's also disabled, but she's not legally disabled at this time. And when she was like in November, they were talking about have plans for Thanksgiving, and she made a comment of, I don't know what I'm going to eat on Thanksgiving, because she's a vegetarian and all her family is turkey heavy, put broth and everything. She can't eat fat. They put butter and everything. So she was thinking, there's not going to be anything on the table that I can safely eat. But she immediately got offers of, oh, you're having food scarcity. We can get you to a food bank. We can get you this. We can get you that. And she didn't need that at that time. But it was nice to know that once you put it out there, whether it's to your doctor or social services, once you say, I need food, you can even ask the internet, where is there a food bank? You know, I know people who go to food banks, and in excuse me, in our state there are different ones in different counties.
Yes.
But they asked because they're very honest, as so many people are. They asked and learned that it's okay to go to two different ones. This one is open, you can get the food on Thursday. This one is open on Tuesday. If you can drive to each of them, you can get food twice a week, you know, and that's okay. It's not gaming the system. I mean, she's just trying to feed her teenage son. Um, so find out what the laws are, because if it's not okay, then you don't go to the other one. But if it's okay, then that's there for you. It's there for people who need these services, and you deserve to have those services. You know, it's not it's not a negative thing. Never feel bad about it, because the services are there exactly for people who are good people who are in hard times right now. But people who are in hard times deserve to put food on their table. They deserve to get free job training if that's what is out there. You know, not have to pay a bunch of money to get trained for something that may or may not be the right thing. But do take advantage of the free services while they're still there. Hopefully, they will always be there. But I would want to encourage people to take advantage of the services that are there for you to make your life sustainable. You deserve it.
Exactly. Oh, that's an important point, Wendy. I have to tell you, it did take me a while to accept
Yeah.
that I was capable or not capable. I was entitled. And I don't like that word entitled, because so
Yeah.
many people look at us who are late diagnosed and saying, really? You need that? Why? And you know your reasons. And autism is an invisible illness. And when I say invisible
Mhm.
is you can't look at us and see our needs. You can't look at us and see how our body is reacting, and you certainly can't see how our nervous system is triggered. And that's all part
Yeah,
of being autistic. Yet, unless someone has X-ray vision, they're not going to see that.
they're
So
not
they have
going
no
to.
right to judge you on what you need. You
Yeah,
know what
and
you need.
exactly. And so often they might say, but you're capable. It's like, yeah, I'm capable of doing this job for like a half hour in the training session. But does that mean I can do it 40 hours a week in loud noises and crowds? That you're not capable if you're not capable of doing it everywhere. Not that you're not a capable person, but that you honor your own limits and boundaries. They're not just, because I don't feel like it boundaries. They are, you deserve accommodations boundaries, because if you're autistic, you probably cannot do a thing that you can easily do 40 hours a week in a noisy, busy environment.
Oh, that brings me up to a major topic, and that is getting the paperwork needed to get the accommodations at work.
Yeah.
Because unless you are legally diagnosed, and in 2019, I went to a mental health clinic, had a 2.5 hour evaluation. But that doesn't mean I was legally autistic, because the woman was not a specialist. She couldn't give us the specialist card that said that I was autistic, but I at least understood myself better. And
Yeah.
I kept going and working. And now what I'm running into at this point, and this was 2019 to 2025, is 6 years. And now I'm finding that that's when I needed to. So what you need to know is that as you get older, you're going to need to start to talk to these doctors and say, I know I can talk to you in a quiet room.
Yeah.
I know I can have eye contact with you because you're the only one here. But you need to understand that if you were to take me to a concert or you were to take me to another place that's not as quiet, you would see that I am not the same person. In this environment, I'm doing very well,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that they have all the answers. And that's what I'm talking about is trying to get the paperwork from medical doctors that don't want to take the time to fully evaluate you. You need to keep trying.
And I would hope that if you went to a therapist who had those tests, because a medical doctor doesn't have autism test. It's not
No.
in their thing, but they have, I presume, the power to make the diagnosis. But if you've gone to the other place, they hopefully they gave you a report saying why you meet this, why they would say that you're autistic, but they can't really make a clinical DSM diagnosis. If you could take that report and give it to your medical doctor and say, they say I'm autistic, and I believe them, but they're not a medical doctor. Can you look at this and can you say I'm autistic? And some of them are going to say no. You know, are they an ally? Are they somebody that will listen to you and give you the benefit of the doubt and say, yeah, I can see you're autistic? And I had, when my kids were younger, uh, every year they had us go back to the doctor and say, are they still autistic? And I'd have all the reports, which were not from medical doctors, and the doctor would look at it and then say yes. And finally, one time when I gave him all the paperwork, I said, you know that autism is a permanent condition and that it's not going to change from year to year. He said, yeah, you're right. This is kind of ridiculous. So he wrote on there, the doctor wrote, this is a permanent condition. It will not change from year to year. And then they quit making us jump through that hoop every year
Oh, wow.
because it's different from I broke my leg, I can't work, but now I can work. It's not that. And it's
No.
not going to change. So if you find a doctor who can be your ally, give him what he needs. And sometimes it's online free tests. Some of the ones online, I understand, are very accurate. But if you have a medical ally, and it might be a nurse practitioner, they might be able to say that or to tell the doctor, I believe this. But if you can get that person on your side to sign that paperwork, then that would be a great thing. And I hope that can happen for you.
Yeah, sometimes the doctor needs to request it from the mental health clinic. I did ask them if I could get a report, and they said, no, your doctor has to request it. So stay
Okay.
on them. Have you been able
Yes.
to get a hold of my records yet? Because if you
Yeah.
don't stay on them, they're not going to do it. Oh, by the way, Janie needs to have us do this. We should probably do it. They're not going to take the time unless you keep talking to them.
And if you go to the mental health department that did your assessment and say, I want to sign a release of records, and you say, this is the name of my doctor, this is my doctor's address or fax number or whatever, and I'm signing permission and hand it to them, that might trigger it. Or at least they will say yes as soon as the doctor asks. But for some of those mental health, that will trigger it. Once you sign that release and request that they send it, they might do it. But
Yeah.
certainly your doctor would need that before they can't legally send information without your permission.
Right. Now, the SSDI, I have learned,
Uh-huh.
will request a doctor's visit for you, paid by
Yes.
Social Security,
Yes.
if they do not have sufficient amount of information. So if for some reason there is a gap between the mental health and your doctor, there is a doctor that is assigned through the Social Security Administration that will do a test on you. And I also know that if you go to some of the counseling centers, I have what is called an IDA, Independent Disability Assessment, which
Good.
is coming up in December. So I can get a secondary form that shows that I am indeed autistic. So there
Yeah.
are a lot of people out there on the internet saying that self-diagnosis is okay. And that is good if you are strong in self-employment situations. but you really do need to have some form of medical health doctor sign off and say that indeed you are, if you're going to work in the workforce. Because what often happens, and Wendy can help me out here, and I've discovered this firsthand, is there are a number of doctors that won't sign off on a disability without that paperwork.
Yeah.
And if they won't sign off on it, you won't get the accommodations you need. And that's a tough thing to do, because
Yes.
I learned in my last job that I could have had an easier situation. But because the motions were not in place to have the doctors receive the information, there was no way for me to get accommodations. So, not having a diagnosis in the doctor's hand can hurt you. If
Yeah.
you're capable of being self employed, it may not be an issue. So, when you're listening to some of these different people who say self diagnosis is okay, that is fine if you're not in the workplace.
Exactly. Self-diagnosis or self-identification. It can be really helpful for your own sense of self, of who you are, to be able to forgive yourself for times that you thought, oh no, why did I do that? Oh no. You're thinking negative thoughts about yourself, and suddenly it's like, wait a minute, I was doing great for an autistic person. So self-identification can really be good for you, but it's not going to help open doors to work accommodations. That's when you need to have that piece of paper, like you said. And the medical doctor wants a piece of paper from somebody else because he doesn't have any autism tests. He doesn't have, I mean, he could do a blood test, but there's no blood test for autism. He can order labs, there's no labs for autism. We're
Wouldn't
not there
that be
yet.
nice?
Make life so much easier for so many people, but we are not there yet. So yeah, as much as self-identification can be helpful to the person to feel better about themselves and to forgive themselves when they did as much as they could and it wasn't what other people might have expected them to be able to do, but they're doing what they can and they deserve to say, yeah, that's okay, doing great while autistic. But if you can find someone that will write out a report, will put in writing why they believe that you're autistic. And when you go and talk to them, it's so natural for late diagnosed autistic adults to automatically have that mask up. You've probably prepared before the appointment, you've rested, you've, kind of gotten yourself ready for it. And then you can do the eye contact thing. You can do the I'm looking up, I'm not looking down. And you can do it for, the hour. And then you might have to rest for 2 days. They don't see that. They just see the hour when your natural inclination to mask. I'm sure it started as a survival strategy, not knowing that you're autistic. It's just like, I have to perform neurotypicality now. I've got to put on this performance. But if it's possible to let down that mask, if you can do so safely, excuse me, and to let them know, I can be with you. Like you said, I can make eye contact with you. Or some people are faking eye contact. It's like, I can look at your glasses instead of your eyes. And I will need to recover from this hour that we spend together because it is really depleting all my social abilities. And you need to know that about me. Just tell the truth.
Yes. And don't be afraid that if the doctor is not receiving you and your words, you may need to find another doctor, as I have.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
I went into a doctor's appointment, an annual checkup 2 years ago. A year ago, excuse me, a year ago, August. And I had concerns. And unfortunately, the insurance companies are not letting the doctors spend as much time with us as they used to spend with us. So you go in with two statements and that's all you have time. And if you find that that medical professional that you're spending your time with to get an annual checkup is not listening, you have the right to find another doctor.
Yes.
You have the right. So what does this all have to do? I know the last 15 minutes we spent talking about some of these alternatives to what
Yeah.
happens if you can't thrive in the workplace, when you get fired, or when you decide you need to quit. Well, these are all answers that I haven't received when I had been fired a couple of times back
Yeah.
before I was diagnosed. The whole mission of the Aspie Bridge is to give you those resources, as I talked about at the beginning, that we were never provided. And so often, families aren't willing to sit down with us to give it to us because they're not understanding our autism yet. If we were late diagnosed. So, by having the Aspie Bridge here, and what I would love you to do is if you go back and look at all of the Aspie Bridge podcasts and say, hey, but you never talked about this, and this is where I need resources. I would
Mhm.
love to know about topics that you would love to know because I have gone through all of the topics with Wendy and so many of my other guests to try and bring you the resources that I found were missing. What resources would you love to see the Aspie Bridge cover? Now, we have a Facebook page called the Aspie Bridge where I'd love you to go on and make comments about what about this topic? What about that topic? And I can either direct you to the episode where we talked about that because there are over 80 episodes now, starting in January 2024 up until this period. There are over 80 episodes. So I can either direct you there, or if we haven't covered it yet, either my dear friend Wendy, if it's a deeper subject, she and I will get back on again, as we enjoy doing, or I can find the appropriate guest who can help you. But I would love to know as I come to a close. I was going to go into the money freedom and time freedom, which is the last part of the whole spectrum health that we talk about in our organization. But I know that that's going to be more of a trigger. And I'm going to avoid doing that in the last quarter of this year because I don't want to bring up triggers. I want to be helpful. And a lot of you are saying, but I don't have the time freedom. I have to work twice as hard. Or I don't have the money freedom because I am working at retail. Or whatever your reasons. It is not the aim of the Aspie Bridge to bring triggers. It's to bring resources. And at that, I would love to have Wendy talk about any of her 5 books that she's written, and perhaps she can give you ideas on what topics I may not have covered, because I'm going as a torchbearer on what topics have been relevant to me, but maybe there are topics out there that you would like to hear. Wendy, would you like to talk about any of your books at this time?
I would love to, but I want to preface it by saying I'm not trying to sell books to people who don't have a lot of extra money for books. I will say, ask your public library. If they don't have my books, they can talk to the other public libraries and borrow them from someone because books are free at the library. So I really want to push the public library system. I grew up in it. I know a lot of you did too. So now that you know that I'm not trying to get money out of you by buying my books, I do have a 5 book series the series is called Adulting While Autistic. The first book in the series is Independent Living While Autistic. And it just has a lot of stuff about independence. And one thing that all the books have in common is for every chapter, I talk about the stuff that I want to talk about. I often have some little acronyms because I think that's fun. But I also have fictional characters that in every book, these fictional characters, there might be 5, 6. I think in dating, there's only 2. But for every topic, I show for each one of these different age, gender characters what their challenges were that were different from each other, how they handled their problem solving strategies. One of those might be able to relate to. So independent living talks about a lot of stuff about gaining independence. And the characters go from an 18-year-old college senior who's just barely an adult to a 62-year-old retiree who just found out he was autistic because his grandson was diagnosed. The second book in the series is called Dating While Autistic. A lot of people, not just autistic people, but a lot of people struggle with dating. The dating scene can be hard. And if you're autistic, I think the whole social aspect of it and not knowing what to say, it's just really hard. So I wanted to talk about that because my late husband was autistic. So I have dated an autistic person. I wasn't autistic, but I do have a little insight into that. And my latest project for my publisher, I just turned it in and it's coming out, I think, in October, but it's a deck of cards, the Dating While Autistic pocket conversation cards. So that if you're on a date and you don't know what to say, you can pick a card, ask your date, do you want to pick a card? It's like a dating coach in a box, and it's in 4 categories. First date, thanks to Santa, first date. Um, Clarifying commitment, like are we boyfriend and girlfriend? Are we, is this going anywhere? Let's get physical is like making that transition from holding hands and kissing to a more intimate relationship. And then the last section is called breaking up without breaking, because not every relationship, but many relationships end with breaking up. And how can we make that the least painless? It happens, like getting fired. Everybody gets fired sometime. Everybody has to quit sometimes. People break up. That happens. So those cards, that's going to be coming out in October. Now, the third book in the Adulting While Autistic series is called Relating While Autistic, Fixed Signals for Neurodivergent Couples. Because I was married to an autistic man, and there are a lot of communication issues. Then the next one is Parenting While Autistic. And many times, autistic parents don't even know that they're autistic until their kids are diagnosed. But they're still living with all of those, and all of those autistic characteristics, not realizing that it's autism. Yeah.
We're just going to put in that's what Orion Kelly, who I mentioned during the tagline, is all about.
Uh-huh.
He didn't know he was autistic till his son was diagnosed. So if you are
Yes.
in that situation that Wendy was just talking about, go listen to Orion Kelly on YouTube, because that's his experience of learning
Yeah.
his son was autistic, and so he learned he was. Go ahead, Wendy.
Yeah. And another side of parenting while autistic is for people who were not late diagnosed, but whose parents maybe knew that they were autistic, might not have had expectations that they were going to grow up and get married and have kids. And people might say, oh, you can't have kids, you're autistic. It's like, excuse me? Some of the best parents I know are autistic. And so don't let people limit
Change.
you by a
Yes.
diagnosis, because yes, you can be an autistic parent and be great at it. And then the last one is the one we've been talking about, Working While Autistic. So those are those 5 books. The only other one that I have before this series of 5 that I think might be relevant here is Recognizing Autism in Women and Girls, because it is different. And that's what my TED Talk is kind of talking about. It's different, and not everyone recognizes it. Your doctor might not recognize it. I hope that your doctor reads this book, because again, it takes a number of fictional characters. They're not real people, but I tell their stories from toddlerhood up to adulthood, and eventually finding out that they're autistic and why they were missed. They thought this one was just ADHD, this one is just OCD, this one they're just shy, this one, they had all these things because they're girls. People were just making, oh, nobody even thinks autism was girls, but it is. It's there, as you know.
Mine was
So,
a case of being hypothyroidism. Everything was blamed on that.
yeah, if you get one diagnosis, it's like everything gets lumped in. But sometimes it's more than one thing. That's just the way life is. So I hope that you will ask your librarian if they don't have any of my books. And the books are Wendell of Whitcomb Marsh. You can call me Wendy, but on the books it's going to say Wendell of Whitcomb Marsh. Ask your librarian, and if they don't have it, why don't they have it? Because you should be able to have access to things for free. That's what our public libraries are for.
And they can get it from another branch. So often
Yes.
there's interlibrary connections where they
That's
can
right.
get it. If it's not at your library, ask them, do they have an interlibrary connection where they can get
Yeah.
it from another branch?
And if they don't, then, if you request it, they might buy it. I mean, libraries love to buy the books that their readers, libraries love library people. If you are their library people and you are asking for something that they don't have, they have a budget. It might not be a huge budget, but they have a budget. If they buy one, then many people can benefit from it. Or
Yes.
maybe my publishers don't want me to say that, but I'll say it anyway. And they won't mind. They're good people. They're not just trying to get a buck. They are also trying to help people and make a difference in the world. So yeah, go to your library, ask for Wendell Whitcomb Marsh, and then I hope you'll let me know what you think of the books.
Absolutely. I often find that when I find a book that I really resonate with, having the library edition to read through it, and then that's the book I'll go buy. Because if you were to buy all the books that were ever created, you would not, it'd be too expensive. But perhaps
Yeah,
there is a favorite book that you read first through the library and say, oh, I'd really like to have a copy for regular going back to reading it again. Either
yeah,
way, that would satisfy you knowing what books would be most appropriate to you.
yeah,
At this time, I want to say thank you to Wendy for being part of this important series on work because, as I say, so many of us, that is our income, that is our getting out and our social all tied to one. And if we don't have work that we feel good about ourselves, if we have, as Wendy said at the beginning of this, getting up and going to work, if that's just dragging you down, there's no point in being at that particular location. Find something where you can really thrive with the people you're working with, thrive with the jobs you're working in, and finding that right interest level. Maybe it's more than one in the case that you can have maybe 10 hours here and 10 hours there. One where you're getting income, but another one where maybe you're getting a couple of dollars because it's your interest level. And then you can try them out. I love the idea, Wendy, of you talking about the temporary work. Let me try this job and see if it fits me.
yeah.
And now you're not committing to a particular job for 6 months. You're trying it out. And you
Mhm.
might just get a paycheck while you try it out.
You should.
So I want to say thank you to Wendy for coming today, and I hope I can come up with another topic that will bring you back to the Aspie Bridge. I'm hoping all of you listeners will really seriously think about what brings you a need for information so that I can get the right guest on here. I know the one topic that I would love to find someone, and goes for guests as well. If you can really help us in the world of technology, that would be key to us because there's so much information coming at us that I would love to do at least one session, if not two, on technology, because that can be a scary place for those of us with autism, with all the information coming at us, with all of the inappropriate information coming at us. And if you would like to vote on getting a technology episode or two, please make sure you let us know that as well because our neurodivergent needs in technology are so different than the neurotypical needs in technology. But I want to say thank you very much for coming to the Aspie Bridge. We
Thank
have
you,
another
Suzanne.
autistic individual coming up next week, and then we'll go from there. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Suzanne. It's always a pleasure to meet you on the bridge.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.